Alicia. There we go. Thanks, Matthew. As he mentioned, I am Richard Lorway. I'm president of goCapeBreton.com. And I'd like to also thank you for coming here today. Our first panel, come on up, please. Our first panel is about the social challenges that we face as a community, and I think we're probably already very aware of many of them. Things like poverty and outmigration and finding a family doctor, from big things and small things, that kind of thing. Yes, we have two mics you can share. There's one there for you, Lynn. So I'll just briefly introduce them, and then they'll each have their 2 minutes, and then we'll open it up to the floor for you to comment. Immediately to my right is Lynn McCarron. She's the Executive Director of United Way Cape Breton. She's worked in the nonprofit sector for 20 years, I can say that, yes? Without giving, yeah. And Lynn, of course, is deeply concerned about the level of poverty in our community. I know that she's working actively in many ways to try to remediate that. Next to her is David Soller. He's the founder and director of the Undercurrent Youth Centre in Glace Bay, and he's soon to open another centre in Sydney. It's not quite open yet, is that correct? And it'll be, in fact, right across the street in what used to be the New Dawn headquarters. Undercurrent's mission is to inspire hope and give children the chance to succeed. And on the far right is your left, my right, your left. Alicia Lake is the coordinator of the Pan Cape Breton Food Hub Co-op. It's a distribution system for local foods in Cape Breton. She's also the founder and past chair of the Bedeck Farmers Market, and has also started the 50% Local September Club, which sees thousands of Nova Scotians dedicating half of their diets to local food sources, local food producers each September, which is no tall order if you've tried to do it. So we'll start off with you, Lynn. You have the mic and you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So 2 minutes is going to be my challenge for sure. As Richard mentioned, I'm the Executive Director for United Way Cape Breton, and just to give you a little history, I have worked my whole career in nonprofit, and when I was approached to take this job at United Way 5 years ago, I thought, hey, this is going to be easy. Cape Bretoners love to help. All I have to do is tell them how, and have the money flow through United Way to the people who need it. This is going to be easy. Yeah. Not so easy. Raising the money, certainly Cape Bretoners are very generous, and they are good to help, but in terms of having that flow and having that good kind of impact that I was looking for, or that I was hoping for, is not necessarily the check that box, it's done. So what I've recognized is since I started there 5 years ago, we've nearly doubled our campaign, which is significant, especially because most United Ways across Canada aren't having that kind of an increase. But what I'm looking at now is how to have that impact. Am I moving people out of poverty, children out of poverty? Are we having the impact that we're looking for? Are there gaps in services? Do we know what they are? Are we addressing them? So we need to get better at evaluating how we're spending our money and making sure that we're investing it in programs that are actually getting results. So that's where I'm at right now. We do have 3 focus areas at United Way: building strong, healthy people, strong communities, kids all that they can be, and poverty to possibility. So the poverty to possibility and kids that all they can be are kind of overlapping right now with our goal of reducing child poverty. As you know, it's 32.4%. If you look at children under the age of 6, it's 42.6%. And if you look at children being ready for school, there's about 40% of kids in CBRM that aren't ready for school at primary. So I think those things are related, and we need to get better at it, and I think we can. I think we're motivated to do better things. We've got some plans. We've got goals set in mind, and in terms of what you can do to help, there's a number of ways. Give, volunteer, act is our philosophy. Give is to actually give money. Volunteer, obvious. And act, you can share what you learned today with a number of other people and hit the marks. Thank you.
Wonderful. Perfect. Did the timer scare you? Kind of accelerating. David, go for it.
Wow. I don't know if I can do that all in 2 minutes, but that was incredible. And I've spent the last, it's hard to believe too, 21 years now working with youth, and 12 years here in Cape Breton. And I think one of the issues that I've dealt with a lot, very much tied to poverty, is our addiction issue amongst our kids and our youth here. And we have some interesting things at Cape Breton. We have some of the highest child poverty. We also, for example, we have the lowest number in Canada when kids start drinking. And to think that poverty and even our addiction issues aren't tied together is, well, they are tied together. And so one of our main themes has been just to give every child every opportunity to succeed here in Cape Breton. And over the past, along working with the youth center here in Glace Bay and now here in Sydney, I also work with Lighthouse Church, and this kind of sums up the issues. In 12 years, I've realized I've worked with a different demographic. I've only done one funeral so far of someone who's died of old age. And everything has been tied to either some addiction issue or some kind of accident, some kind of tragedy, and that's not okay. And so part of what we believe is we have a growing addiction problem actually here in Cape Breton that's not talked about. And I believe that as long as we're only dealing with the problem that's growing, we will never have enough resources because we're only dealing with a growing issue. And part of what I believe we need here in Cape Breton is to actually focus on how do we lift children and youth out so that is not their future in the first place. And actually, instead of just dealing with the problem after, let's work on prevention. And so, of course, we need more jobs. That's a huge thing here in Cape Breton. But I also believe that there's people and programs. We have great people in Cape Breton who I believe that we can work together to keep hundreds and thousands of kids and youth out of the cycle of poverty and addiction.
Fantastic. Super. Thank you, David. If you could pass that to you. There you go.
Everyone else is doing so well, sticking on
Okay,
time.
we're resetting. Yeah, all right, Alicia.
Give me more time. Okay, so I feel like I might be on the wrong panel, but I'm going to try to fit in. So I'm an MBA, but I'm an MBA in community economic development. So my major focus in life is trying to improve the economy here in Cape Breton. So from my perspective, there's really two ways to fix an economy. One is to increase your inflows, so things like tourism and exporting, and the second way is to decrease your outflows, so to stop up your leakages. So for that reason, what I focus my work on is building the local food economy. When we talk about the local food economy, we're talking about hundreds of jobs, hundreds of businesses across Cape Breton. Every time we spend $1 here from a local food producer, whether it's a farmer, whether it's someone making jam or jelly, or one of our many great seafood producers, we're keeping that money here in Cape Breton, and we're keeping people working, and we're keeping people here in our communities. And what I think is really exciting about working in this area in local food is that it's something that gives everybody an opportunity to participate. Every person in Cape Breton, every person in this room eats all the time, right? Everyone 3 times a day at least, me very many more times than that. But it really gives us all that opportunity to make a huge difference in our community, which is really powerful and I think is really, oh my gosh, I have so much more time than I thought. This is great. And I think that what I see in my work is a lot of hope and a lot of people that are really making huge contributions to the community. We have lots of younger farmers coming in. We have people having babies. The work I do with the Food Hub in the last year, we had 3 of our food producers out of 30 had new babies in this last year. So it's a really encouraging field to be working in and a great thing everybody can participate in. Everybody can make a difference at least 3 times a day.
Fantastic. And extremely efficient.
I know, I get her done.
Okie doke, so now is the portion of the program where we open it up to comments, questions. You can respond to something they've said. You can come up with an idea yourself. And it doesn't necessarily have to address the issues they've raised. It could be anything of, okay, we have someone in the... Tristan, can you grab the mic? And the mic should be on, so, yeah. And by the way, you get 2 minutes as well, right?
Okay.
Just for be fair.
Hi, Debbie Keating here. I'm just wondering, especially now that we're in the midst of an election, these topics are not talked about. They're not discussed. They're not on the agenda of anybody's, very political platform. So how do we bump it up so that it becomes a priority? Like when they're, I don't know, releasing their platforms, or even for the discussion level. How do we bump it up so that it becomes a priority not just of the people, but of the politicians?
And would you like someone to respond to that? Or
anyone.
Anyone on the floor?
It's just so frustrating to know. I mean, I have a personal connection with this because I lost my son with addictions. So it's just, to me, just the disregard and it's just a blatant turn your head attitude. I've gone to politicians and said, what's your stand? What are we going to do? How are we going to motivate? You're the power. We're the people. How are we going to change this? And I get nothing. So how do we do that?
David, perhaps you've had some insight into
I think there's some positive things we can do, and at the same time, I'll start off by saying I'm actually very frustrated. I've been running a youth center for years here, and our goal actually by 2020 is that we'll be having about 1,000 kids and youth in programs on a weekly basis, so it's a large number of kids. And what everyone doesn't know, like, we wonder how do places like this succeed. I'll be honest with you, without things like United Way and the public helping, it wouldn't happen, because in the last 10 years, the amount of money that we've gotten from the provincial, CBRM, and federal governments to run programs, and I would say we're one of the more, like a program that a lot of people know, is zero. It's like we don't get government. We got some money, like we got funds when it came to we want to build something, and you can get funds for those. But as far as running programs and providing services, those things don't exist on a government level. They don't help a group like us do that. However, what we do have, we have a lot of community people and groups who actually make that happen. So those people need to be commended. Even the reason we did the Face of Addiction project, which some people may know about last year, was in essence to try to like tell the story. I think that's where it has to start, is tell the story of what's going on in Cape Breton. And I feel that's something that we've had to do. But I would say, like, we have to be consistent in it. I'm extremely frustrated because I spend, like, I'm trying to run a youth center, but 50% of my time I'm trying to raise the money to keep something open. And that's actually, it should be embarrassing, to tell you the truth. That's what I've come to. The amount of death that is here in Cape Breton, 55% of our young adult males in Cape Breton are considered problem drinkers. Like, to think that's not having an impact on everything in Cape Breton, and the fact that our addiction numbers are growing, we have 600% higher per capita the amount of needles that get exchanged here in Cape Breton compared to the mainland. Those numbers cannot be ignored.
and maybe yet they are, unfortunately. So yeah.
you
Lynn?
mind?
Yeah.
So for United Way, now I don't have to do with specifically with addictions, or that's usually a health thing, so I'm not going to speak to that one specifically, but I will say that because United Way tends to represent more organizations and not have a single agenda, I have been very fortunate to have politicians listen to me. So, but because I am representing, like I say, the bigger people, I think that's why. And I'm tenacious. I call and write and continue. Well, what I've done, so just to give you a couple of things that have happened in terms of action for me, I put signs out was it last year we had the federal election? It seems like so long ago. Put out signs, and so I was able to get a chance to meet with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Families and Services, and they talked about employment programs, and I now have federal politicians working with me on how to get access funding for those kinds of programs. I was able to work with the municipal government, and we've done some changes with transit, and that's what, you have to work with what they have within their what their responsibilities are. So transit is something that municipal government can do. So we now have transit passes, which we didn't have this time last year. So totally pumped about that. They did surveys and stuff like that. They're looking at now revamping the transit system to be more accommodating for people to get to their employment programs and to their employment. They're understanding now that the number one reason people use the bus was for work. So there's an economic impact for that. And then the provincial government, I've lobbied them, in terms of childcare and youth programs and things like that. And I've talked to them about programs like Dave's that have trouble because they're constantly looking for funding and they can't do outcomes and evaluations and give me the kind of data that I need in order to be able to justify the ask to donors. And they've given me funding to hire a person, which will be posted soon, so to actually have more support for the nonprofit communities. So I've been very fortunate on those three levels of government to actually have action that I'm feeling good about.
Thank you. Sure, do you take the mic back?
So Lynn, I mean, you're to be commended to draw awareness to the whole situation, and certainly United Way is acting, like Dave said, a community organization acting. But, I remember like last year, you went to a national symposium where mayors lead, and you went to it, and our mayor didn't go. So, and then you had meetings with who went with you to meet Justin Trudeau? Was there any government level? I mean, you were invited to go to meet Justin Trudeau.
Well, we requested it, yes. So.
Oh, you requested it.
Requested the meeting, yes.
So, But, I mean, it was...
So Mark Eiking facilitated that request to have it come to fruition, and he was there along with Catherine and Steve, our campaign chairs.
But I think my point is that municipally, like if we're going to take ownership in Cape Breton for our own issues, that the government, the municipal government has to recognize and take action, like you're taking action. Like Dave said, the community groups are definitely stepping up and taking action because we have to. But to make that awareness with the power, the politicians to go with you, to be with you.
So the mayor couldn't come to Edmonton, but he did send Councillor Daryl Flynn, who was amazed with what was happening out there and through the conference. And we took, Daryl and I met with the mayor and his staff when we came back from the conference, and it was decided that we would have our own summit here in Cape Breton, where we would create a poverty reduction strategy for CBRM. That's tentatively planned for November. It's the elections kind of put me in the midst of trying in terms of funding, because the municipality is looking after the lion's share of that in terms of funding. And so because of the election, that it's but we're looking at that for November, and I was going to mention that. So this will be an actionable item that the municipality is also taking a lead on, or collaborating with me on, and that will be your opportunity to come forward and say, okay, in terms of a strategy for Cape Breton, what do you see needing to happen? So obviously healthcare is and addictions is an issue, but and poverty is an issue, education is an issue, employment's an issue. So if I have great programs, but then I have no place to go to work. And the other thing is recognizing that a person who works full-time, full year, at minimum wage, is still living in poverty. So, that's some of our realities with some of the small businesses and some of the, retail outlets and things like that we tend to be able to look to for employment. So we have to look bigger. We have to look bigger picture. And I think having that input coming, it's like I want this conference to be not just people who are living in poverty or people who are working with living in poverty to come to this conference. We need businesses to come. We need employers to come. We need, the general public to come and say, what do you see happening here to make this successful? Because I don't have all the answers by any means.
There's one over here. So please take the mic. Yeah. While we're just waiting for that, is there a way to connect local food production with food security issues? I'm just throwing that out there eventually after.
Okay. Sure. I just wanted to make one quick comment, though, about this issue around government support. And obviously, I don't have experience in your issues, so you're talking about, and I don't mean to say this in a way that diminishes the issues around poverty and addictions, but with in local food, we've had tremendous support at the municipal level, really across the island, but as far as the other levels of government, we succeed in spite of them, not with them for the most part. So it's always hard, but I think, we have to kind of make our own way as a community and really coming together to make things happen. Whether the government follows or not, we'll see.
Kenzie?
Yeah, two quick things. Debbie, I think one way to address your question was, we clearly need to increase awareness on all of these issues. And to me, one striking thing that we need to do, and I think we all need to do it, is to use goCapeBreton more to do that. To get on the website and increase the awareness of these issues. The site is beautiful for that, and it will do that. The second thing was, Alicia, have you heard of an idea of, I find this really intriguing, but I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but there's some talk of trying to build cold climate greenhouses near schools, or as part of school lots, so that the kids would get involved in actually growing and learning the growth of food, and probably learn to appreciate that food too a lot more if they're involved in its effort.
Yeah, so there's a lot of programs happening around Cape Breton, getting kids into growing food in community gardens. Len Vasello probably knows more about the cold climate. He's kind of a cold climate growing specialist. And I know Nigel is also working on a project with cold climate greenhouses with CBU. So yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things happening in that way. Obviously in Cape Breton we have an extremely short growing season, which doesn't help with our local food economy, but that said, we do have a lot of other products that kind of fill in those gaps as well. We have a lot of people doing food processing here, not nearly enough, but we do have, a robust seafood industry and that type of thing as well. But I think, it's definitely really important to try to get kids interested in this as jobs, because for a long time, people have not really recognized that when we're talking about farming or any type of food processing, we're really talking about business development. We're talking about, job creation. We bring a lot of kids into the farmers markets to look at, these businesses, and a lot of kids say like, oh, I never thought that I could do that as a living. I never thought I could actually make a living doing that. So I think all of those things together are really important to help kids kind of understand that, yeah, we are talking about jobs. We're talking about a way to make a future here. And in Cape Breton, we have land, we're surrounded by sea, we have all the resources that we need to create a really robust food system and have lots more people living and working in those ways.
Thanks, Alicia. We have two here.
I see that in the community that there is a fair amount of money. When I watch how many people come out for Chase the Ace, when I see a lot of big, noisy toys ruining the environment, saying, look at me, how successful I am, I think we need to look at the top, look at the values there, and try to convince people that their success should not be expressed in buying more things, but in investing in the community, such as hospitals, schools, library, your programs. And how can we give those individuals recognition in a way that it feels good for them and they want to put their money into that sort of activity and approach their life from how much is enough rather than how big can it be.
Good point. Good point. Philanthropy is it's not something that we're used to maybe in this community or in this culture. I'm just speaking because sometimes you spend time in the U.S. and you see people who wealthy individuals, mind you, they have a lot of money, but they've funded huge public institutions. And we don't see that here as much, for sure. Sir?
Yes, my name is Len Vicello. I manage Blue Heron Farm in Gardner Mines. And I work with a number of community gardens, Glace Bay Food Bank, CBU. They've got one over in Westmount. But anyway, I think there's tremendous potential, and there's a great healing potential for gardening, gardens, and gardening. If you look at the history of Cape Breton, when the mines were having problems in the 20s, they had huge community gardens. People got together and grow their own food. If you look, what's the name of the place in French Vale for addictions? Talbot House. When they set that up, they set up as a farm. And people worked on the farm, had something to do, and had the healing effect of working with animals and plants. That's all gone now. I think there's tremendous potential for community gardens and for the industry of farming. And I disagree with Alicia in terms of our climate. Actually, it's very good for some crops, overwintering spinach, etc. And it doesn't get real cold here. It doesn't get really warm in the summer. It doesn't get really cold in the winter. And I overwinter spinach. It does very well. And I think there is potential for an industry and for a healing potential of farming. We have expertise here, and we just got to tap into that expertise to work with community gardens. And I'm willing to make a pledge. I'm here and I work with a bunch of community gardens. I'm willing to work with many more if there's interest and putting projects together. I know they did put a proposal together with mental health about doing some gardening stuff, and it was turned down. But I think there is potential if we get the right people at the to come to the table. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I think you've won a toque for that as well. I also want to draw your attention to some of the comments we're getting online, and a few of them are related to the idea of what can we as average citizens do to make a difference. And that's addressed also in terms of addiction and poverty, and also in terms of, I see one there about sort of a timeout space. But I guess the question, all these things boil down to what can the average citizen do? And do you have, does any of the panelists have thoughts on that?
Just because the government was mentioned, one thing I do believe, like, what role does government have? The CBRM right now, like, I feel like I am working with a couple of the councillors who seem to be very interested in some issues. But one of the things for a group like myself talking to the city is when I say, well, what we actually need is core funding, or we need funds for like programs. There's actually, we can't apply. It's their own policy that they don't fund those types of things. And so that's a shift that needs to happen in our government. And so how will that happen? That will happen when we say, this is actually what we would like as a community, that if you see that there's a way that you can help in this situation, go do it. I sat in a meeting just a couple months ago, and it was about hockey in Glace Bay, and saying, you know, there's no kid, someone got up and said, there's no kid in Glace Bay can't play hockey if they really want to, because, you know, they can sell tickets, etc., and, you know, get everything paid for if they really work hard. And I stood up and I actually disagreed with that. And I said, well, financially that may be the case, but what we have is also is a generation who does not have the home support or community support to ever make that happen. No one's ever going to drive them to a hockey game. No one's going to ever go get their equipment. So when it comes down to what can we do as a community, well, I know I work with the youth center, but really what we need is just people who will become parents and just care for children, youth and children around, and just that you'll do that for your neighbor, you do that whether it be in a center or someone you're volunteering, is that you need to find a place where you can make those connections and actually be the person who helps walk that child or teen who does not have those supports somewhere else, and you become that for them. And I think that's just finding a place to do that yourself.
Thank you. A couple of questions down the back there.
Good morning. I really like the statement tied to the question, don't rely on politicians, what can everyday people do? I happen to think elections are a fantastic opportunity to change our outcomes. I'll vote for politicians that will say to me, face to face, that they'll make decisions based on 10 and 20-year outcomes and not expediency, not for the next election. So when a guy stands on my doorstep and says, I don't care whether I'm re-elected or not, I'm going to make hard decisions now, that person's going to get my vote. So the what can everyday people do is talk to the people in your sphere of influence. Talk to your spouse, talk to your parents, your cousins, your neighbors, and have them support those candidates that are prepared to make hard decisions that will have longer term outcomes than simply re-election. And I say that with respect to a couple of politicians that we know take those approach, and they're good to be re-elected. They don't care about the outcome of the election itself, they care about the outcome in the community.
Thank you. And there's a question over there. There's a woman at the back in the corner. Oh, sorry, Stephen, you're allowed to talk. I'm sorry, you're right.
Just because I'm wearing the green shirt, I don't get to talk. What I was going to say is the biggest issues I see with getting things done is, and also with a lot of the issues that surface themselves in Cape Breton, is that we only have 100,000 people. And whether we know it or not, there's a lot of social circles in Cape Breton. And the circles don't necessarily overlap. And anyone that gets stuff done knows that you really gauge your success once you go beyond your circle. So if your circle is 30 people or 100 people, it's easy to get them invested. But if you can cross over to another circle, and I always talk about this when I plan events or projects or anything like that, is if you can commingle circles or crossbreed circles or whatever, and get another circle of people really invested in your idea, your project, your goal, it starts spreading amazingly quickly. And I think it's really important to try and make those connections outside of a circle. And it comes to issues too, such as poverty and addiction and stuff like that. Whether it is your circle is your family and you can't get beyond that family, or your circle is your friends that are all into addiction also, or into, you know, whatever you're not interested in. If you have a young person that wants to play classical music and he's hanging around with people and they're dissing him every time he picks up an oboe, right? Like, it's hard for him to really get that drive to say that this is what I want to do. So even like in the youth group, in the communities and everything, if you can connect with people outside of your circle and connect those youth or those people with outside of their circle, then I just feel that, you know, you can make great leaps and bounds. And I'll put together a pledge for the youth center. When you open your doors here, talk to me, Stephen Rolls. You'll find me on Facebook. And I want to connect people to you and the youth, whether it be in the creative community or the...
We let you go on a bit because you're mid-pledge, but there's somebody with a microphone right here. There's two people. And I think probably after these two people, or three, the next two or three, we'll close this session and we'll start the next one.
Hi.
This woman, sorry, this woman over here was waiting a little bit longer. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just like to comment on a couple of things that have been said already here today. In respect to the platforms of certain politicians and their attitude toward poverty, I think it's really important to recognize there are people who are running right now, and poverty, child poverty is on their platform. It's a very important issue. And it's really, really important for us to get behind those people. And Nigel has a very good platform, Rankin McSween. Child poverty is a top issue for him, right? So we need to get behind this issue. But another thing that's really, really important, and I see it in this community all the time, apathy and complacency are enemies of progress. Really, there's so many people who don't even understand what the issues are in our community. We need to get this message out to people in our workplace, in our families, and in our social circles. And to this gentleman's point over here, the long-term politicians who are making plans for the long term, this is so important because I just feel like sometimes politicians are just spinning their wheels with today's issues. For instance, if you look at what's going on in Cape Breton with Outmigration, in 10 to 15 years, we are going to have the majority of our population is going to be on fixed incomes. Just think about that, you know, with the rising property taxes and everything like that. People may not even be able to keep their houses if you think about that. So I think that point of politicians, you know, with a long term, so people have to get engaged with their politicians and what their actual platforms are and talk to people and get people in social circles, as Stephen was saying, overlap your social circles, talk to everybody, ask people if they know about the issues. This is what's really important.
Thank you. Christian?
Thank you, Richard. Well, I have to commend all of you because it's amazing what's going on. The food hub, I totally agree with. It's a foundational thing in our community. If we can't care or feed our own people, then that foundation is crumbling. And the big grocery stores that we all attend are all about convenience. And I think that's the key for the food hub and maybe the future of the food hub is finding a way to get that local produce on the tables of local people, but also in a manner that's convenient and competitive against the Sobeys and the Loblaws and those who are fundamentally pushing food, local growers out and importing food from everywhere from China right through into the US and whatnot. So we're losing that foundation. If that crumbles, you know, it's not good for all of us. Poverty. We talk a lot about poverty, obviously, child poverty in particular, but I see that we're forgetting the fact that the kids in poverty are the children of parents in poverty. Okay? So, yes, child poverty is horrible, but it's the result of parent poverty. And people working minimum wage jobs, people working or underemployed, you know, the working poor we often refer to. That needs to be taken into consideration and addressed. Things like housing issues. A person who's, you know, currently I think it is, they cap it at, for regional housing, I think they cap it at around $39,000 for a family of 4. When was that cap created? How much has energy costs gone up so that local families that we can keep here, help them take care of their homes, put a roof on and whatnot. You know, they may be at $50,000 a year, but they're still in the same 40,000. Their money's worth 40,000 compared to when that cap was created, for example. These are the types of things.
Okay, thank you. And we have one last comment.
Thank you very much. So my name's Eli Quirk. I'm a CBU student. I'm not a professional of anything at all, but, timer, yeah. Anyway, I know we were talking about community support and funding and things like that, and I just wanted to bring attention to the former AIDS Coalition Cape Breton, the Ally Center, and they're looking at closing, and they're a big help with addictions, needle exchange, HIV, they have a medical clinic, a food bank, things like that, and I just kind of wanted to bring that up, that they're losing their federal funding, and so I want to kind of pledge to bring some awareness to the Ally Center. I'm not a professional. I'm not someone who knows a lot about the Ally Center. Like, I know what they do. I've been a member of I've participated in the trans support group, so they have helped me through a lot of things. So I just wanted to bring up that losing services like that, like about addiction, like that help, like LGBT youth, things like that, it's just really sad to see, and hopefully bringing awareness to it and kind of talking to our federal government, our municipal government, anyone to kind of bring up that it's important. So thank you.
Thank you. If you can talk to me after, I'm certainly willing to help you raise awareness through using goCapeBreton.com. We can help. So talk to me after. So I think that's it for the first session. Thank you so much to our panelists. Unless there's some burning thing you want to say, you're looking at me. So.
Can I just say a quote that I was doing some homework last night before I came here, and I thought it was really fitting for today. It's a Henry Ford quote. Actually, some people say it's anonymous. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. So I think this is coming together, staying together, and hopefully being part of things down the road, and actually physically working together. We'll see success. So thank you.
And
Alicia, go for it.
I just want to lighten the mood a little bit. When I look out, I see a lot of people who look very stressed and a little too serious. And I think that, yes, we have serious issues, and absolutely we need to think deeply and think a lot about how to fix problems. But I think there's a lot of hope here, right? There's a lot of opportunities for us to make things better, particularly in the work I do, but in the work that everyone is doing. So it would be great to see people, really coming out of this more positive and feeling upbeat. And you know what I want to say is that beer is the new steel, so come on.
Don't forget, first 50 pledges get toots. Okay, we're going to have a 10-minute break for networking, coffee, take pledges at the photo booth, take pledges you can write them on the board at the back, on the sides, the paper, and also we're collecting your names and emails if you wish to stay in touch. Thank you.